Vedant, how are you?
I'm good, Urmi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So thank you so much for coming on my channel today. I am very excited to have this conversation. I know you have a very interesting background with a lot of designations attached to your name or yet to attach. So let's start by you telling us a bit who you are and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And so, yeah, I'll tell you about myself. So, currently, I am working as a research analyst for Ballentine Partners. It's a wealth management firm based here in Boston area, but we also have our offices in New Hampshire and Florida. And before that, I was pursuing my master's from University of Massachusetts Amherst. It was master's in finance, and I did my bachelor's in commerce from Mumbai University. And along with that, I also, like as you mentioned, I have the CFA designation, the level one for FRM and the CAIA. So yeah, that's about me.
Well, impressive. You have a lot of things behind you. I want to ask you because you have the CFA designation and also because you have your FRM level 1 and so forth. Because my understanding is that you have the CFA designation, you have done the FRM part 1, and you have done CAIA part 1 as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I'm being more specific, my master's in finance, it was a specialization in alternative investments.
Gotcha.
And the University of Massachusetts has an affiliation with the CAIA Institute. And so, they cover all the stuff of level 1. And level 1 automatically gets waived off when you pursue your master's from University of Massachusetts.
Okay. Did you know that you get also an exemption if you have completed your CFA? Like if you have all the 3 levels and so forth, you get an exemption from CAIA level 1 because I got it.
Right. Yeah. Of course, there's the another provision too. But at the time when I was enrolling for my master's, I didn't have the CFA designation. I had all the 3 levels, but I didn't have the charter. So.
Okay, I got it. So my question for you is, if you can tell us between, like among the CFA, the FRM, which one was the most challenging in terms of like studying? Because I don't know much about the FRM. I know that it's all about like risk management, but maybe if you can spend a couple of minutes just telling us a bit about FRM, how it's structured, how it differs from the CFA, and how difficult it is.
Sure. So if you ask me about the most challenging exam, it would be like CFA level 3 for me because of a structural change from, going to a descriptive based exam from like MCQ pattern, right? I mean, for the first 2 levels, you have MCQs, but at level 3, you have a descriptive based exam where you need to type in all your answers. So that structural change caused a little bit of problems to me. But in terms of the MCQ exams, of course, I would rate FRM slightly more difficult than the CFA exams because of a simple structure that they have 4 MCQs, like 4 options.
Okay.
And the CFA has 3 options.
Yes.
So chances of you making an error is slightly higher, right? And I believe that there is a lot of material available for CFA out there. There are a lot of vendors providing you with a lot of questions to practice, and there are a lot of resources you can refer to. But for some reason, for FRM, there aren't much resources for you to practice and to get a hang of those quality of questions. So for me, the MCQ exam at FRM, it was slightly more challenging, more difficult. The question, I was not sure about my answers, but yeah, eventually I got through. So I would rate FRM slightly more difficult than the CFA exam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about FRM, like how, like what it entails? What do you study when you're studying FRM? How many hours are required to pass the level 1 exam, and how many exams are there?
Yeah, absolutely. So FRM has 2 parts, part 1, part 2. In part 1, you have 4 subjects. In part 1, you have 4 subjects. In part 2, you have 6 subjects. So part 2 is very lengthy, very complicated, very heavy material. But at the same time, both, as I mentioned, they have like it's an MCQ based exam for 4 hours non-stop. There are about there are about 100 questions in part 1 and about 60 questions in part 2. So that's how the exam is basically like structured. How it differs from CFA. It's more risk focused, of course, but at the same time, it's very quantitative. There's a lot of quant also, because if you see in the industry, all the risk professionals, they need to be thorough with their quantitative side of the finance, So it focuses a lot more on the derivations of those formula, about the calculus, and on the quantitative side. So that's how it is different from CFA. CFA, I would say, is more of a qualitative aspect to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in FRM, it's more of a quantitative, quant heavy,
Okay, and is there like a recommended number of hours that you have to put in to pass the exam? What's the passing level, and also how many times is the exam offered for level 1?
So I believe FRM Part 1 is offered 3 times a year.
Okay.
Part 2 is offered just 2 times a year. That's how I happen to believe. I'm not sure about the current changes. If you ask me about the number of hours, the ideal recommendation that they provide is 300 hours.
Okay.
But I myself don't think that that's enough. You need to put more. If I believe you have a prior knowledge about the CFA level 1 or level 2, then it gets easier for you at level 1 and at FRM. But if you don't have any prior knowledge or prior experience, then I would recommend as much as possible, more than 300 hours. 300 hours won't be enough for FRM Part 1. Or even for Part 2, So.
What are there any overlapping topics or chapters with the CFA? I'm assuming yes, but you can tell us.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I always mention these certificates, be it CAIA, be it FRM or CFA, they do tend to complement a lot to each other. There are a lot of overlapping concepts, but some might have more specialized area, like risk is the primary focus in FRM. Valuation and asset allocation, portfolio management is a lot focused in CFA. And in CAIA, it's all about the alternative. But all the finance concepts, they tend to, overlap with each other, and you can always complement it. So yeah, of course.
Yeah. So in terms of FRM, you said there is less content out there. So my question is, how did you study for FRM? Did you use any particular resource, any particular approved providers? Tell us your secrets.
Absolutely. I'll be more than happy to share my secrets.
It's no longer a secret then.
Yeah. So, my approach to any exam that I enroll for, it always has been, I do enroll for classes, vendors. I do take additional classes of any specialized vendor. And my belief is when it comes from a professional towards you, it can enhance your understanding of the concept. That's the least that can do. But end of the day, it's how much practice and how much hours you put into it. And to any exam, these kind of exams, it requires a lot of practice. It's not if you read the material, it is very understanding. You'll feel that you know everything. But when you sit in that actual situation, it gets very challenging. So the ideal recommendation for anyone is practice. Yeah.
So here's my follow-up question to you, because even when you said at the introduction, you said you have an undergraduate degree, you have a master degree, then you have pursued the CFA, you are pursuing the FRM. My question is why do you have so many, and what is your goal at the end? What made you start to begin with this designation, and how did you come up to decide what to do next?
Sure. So constant discussion about stock markets within my family, it always made me excited to know about this thing, but I certainly was not aware. And in the pursuit of digging more about the stock market, just the stock market, I came across CFA, and that's when I dig more into the CFA, what it is and how the structure is. And just looking at the curriculum, I knew that this is something that I have to take. No matter what, I am taking CFA. And I remember enrolling for CFA in 2020, but then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And my attempts would constantly get deferred. But luckily, in Feb 21, I was finally able to attend my CFA level 1. And by May 22, I had finished my CFA. Yeah, and by that time, I had learned a lot about finance, a lot, because of course, CFA, it digs deeper into all sort of concepts, and it enhances your knowledge quite a lot. but that was not enough for me. There were many certificates that I would come across, like the CAIA, the FRM, and it just made me curious as to what it entails, what it has, how it is different. And that led me to like further enrolling myself for the FRM part 1, which of course, like had its own positive aspects to it. A lot of quantitative oriented studies that I had to do. So it was slightly different from CFA. Again, like the idea here is to, like gain as much as knowledge as possible. I know they complement each other a lot, but at the same time, there is always something new that you would end up learning. So that has been my focus. And if you ask me about my goal, so yes, I do intend to get that triple crown, the CFA, CAIA and FRM. So hopefully by next year, that would be my goal, to get it.
Yeah. 2025, here I come. Yes.
Yeah.
So when are you writing your FRM part 2, and when are you writing your CAIA part 2?
So given the circumstances, of course, there's one more thing about the FRM. So let's say if you pass FRM part 1, you have 4 years to pass the part 2. If you don't do it in that 4 years, you are again supposed to write the FRM part 1 exam.
No way.
So yeah, and it's been 2 years already that I have written my FRM part 1. So I need to prioritize FRM part 2 first. So that would be like, I'm targeting it in May, and probably the September or the October attempt for the CAIA level 2. So that's how I am planning of structuring it. But again, like it's a long way ahead, but hopefully it fits well.
You can do it. Yeah. You can do it, definitely. You seem to, have the willingness to study and pursue a lot of things, so you can do it. I do want to ask you another question, which is, you have a lot of this designation. You're also working full time, and I want to ask you, when you were pursuing all of this designation, were you working full time or not? Like, how did you manage with your work-life balance situation?
Yes, I was working full time, and I know it is very difficult, very challenging. There are no weekends for you. Weekends is the time when you study and when you put that work, And apart from that, even if you get any, so the plan here is very simple. You try to do 10 hours of study work during your weekday, and then in weekends as much as possible, even 10 or 12 hours per day. So that's an ideal structure to study. But again, the key here is to be consistent. If you are not consistent over time, if you're not reviewing your material on a consistent basis, you would end up forgetting those things. It's like a 6-month process, but you need to be consistent in that time frame, and things will happen to you. So that's how it is. It needs to be done.
Yeah, it needs to be done. You have to be consistent, and you have no life, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Going back to your CFA, I want to ask you how you have studied for each of the levels, and I want to ask you what approved providers did you use? Were there any specific technique that you have applied that maybe you can share with us?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I would always enroll for a vendor. So most of the vendors that I enrolled for, they were Indian vendors. Gotcha. That might not be optimal for the rest of the world, but I do know good vendors for the rest of the world, and there are the Schweizer. The Schweizer material, the material is really awesome. They have summarized all the concepts in a really well structured manner for you to refer them. So that material is really very good. Apart from Schweizer, if you more want to learn from some person who specialize into this, then there is IFT. Even they are really very good. I used to use IFT for my review sessions. I took their review courses. That was very helpful for me. Just a 1 hour, let's say 1 hour lesson, 1 hour review session on one particular topic, and that's it. So it's for a later part. But once you complete your actual first reading and the courses, all the materials, once you review it, then you are supposed to just practice. Practice as many questions as possible, during that time frame. Read through the answer that is written in those questions, to further solidify your understanding of the concept. And then for the last 15 days, you write mock exams, and you just review your material and your mistakes done. So that's a plan going forward. Of course, I would encourage your viewers to reach out to me personally on my LinkedIn. I would like try to like give them guidance if needed, in any matter. Yeah. So,
Sounds good. Sounds good. And I will definitely put your LinkedIn profile in the description.
sure.
As we're approaching the end of this, I do want to ask you to share one piece of advice for anyone who's pursuing the CFA designation and one piece of advice for anyone pursuing the FRM.
Okay. So one piece of advice I would give to anyone is be curious. Like whenever you are studying, study from a perspective that you are gaining some knowledge. Don't just study to pass the exams. You might fail or you might pass the exam, but the learning you get from pursuing all these certification is unparalleled. Your understanding is way better than any student out there in terms of finance or anything. So, and in terms of like preparations, I would say like be consistent and practice as many questions as possible. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that was really well said. Well, this is the end of the interview, but we're not yet done because I have a rapid fire question. So I want you to think very quickly. I don't want you to elaborate.
Okay.
Whatever comes to your mind, just go ahead and tell me, okay?
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I hope so.
So the first question is, the first thing that you do when you wake up?
It's meditation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Last thing you do before going to bed?
Read my Kindle.
Okay. Favorite travel destination?
It's Goa from India. Yeah.
Favorite snack?
Protein bars.
What's that?
Protein bars.
Protein bars. Okay, gotcha.
It's just like I just carry it everywhere with me. So.
Yeah. And the last question, best advice you have ever got. This doesn't have to be related to CFA, anything. It could be really anything.
It's always from my mother, I would say. It's like, do good to others and good will follow to you. So that's, I think, the best advice that I have ever got. Yeah.
That's a very good advice. Well, Vedant, thank you so much for coming today. Before we go, do you want to tell us how people can connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I believe that I've shared my LinkedIn profile with you. That would be like the best place for. I'm like very active on LinkedIn, so please feel free to reach me out there, and I'll make sure that I connect with you there. Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks to you, and it's a pleasure being here on this platform. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.